You get home from work at 5 p.m. You replace the batteries in your calculator because you prefer a physical calculator on hand rather than what's built into your desktop. The solar panel on the calculator doesn't get enough light because there's no sun in your office. So you need to just keep replacing those batteries. After you've done that, you have about 2 hours left to partake in any sort of leisure activity before you have to go downtown to a restaurant you don't want to go to for your family members to keep up appearances. In that small amount of time where you're looking for some amount of enjoyment, you're looking for a video game to play, and you're hoping that in 2 hours it's going to be fun. So you heard about Oblivion Remastered, The Elder Scrolls 4, and you're thinking to yourself, in a bite sized amount, is this going to be a game that's fairly enjoyable? Well, I aim to answer that question right now. In front of me is a tool that I've used to assign certain criteria that are helpful for evaluating a game from the perspective of the 9 to 5 worker. So for this game, I'll go through each of the categories that I've identified and I'll assign a score. I'll explain each criteria as I go through them, and then at the end of it, we'll take a total score to see, is this game good for the 9 to 5 worker? So getting right into it. The game is called Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered. So if you've ever heard of Skyrim, this is the game that came out before that, way back, I think 2006, 2007. They've remastered it. So a studio remade all the visual assets. It's pretty much the same game with a shinier coat of paint in the Unreal Engine. They have changed some balance and mechanics. If you played the original game, there are certain quality of life differences, but largely the game is identical. It's a single player game. It's an RPG fantasy game, just like Skyrim. Different systems, but it's the exact same feel you'll be accustomed to with a Fallout or a Skyrim game. The current cost is $66.99 Canadian, so it's not incredibly cheap. And I played this one for about 25 and a half hours. But I did play the original Oblivion when I was a kid and for, multiple times as I was growing up on the Xbox and on the computer. So I know a lot about this game regardless of how much time I spent on the remastered edition. So starting off with time to reward. If you were to buy this game and boot it up, how long would it take until you have fun? Well, that answer is going to depend on two things. Do you care about cutscenes? And how long are you going to spend making your character? The cutscene in the beginning, I believe, is skippable. It's only a few minutes. So regardless of whether you watch that or not, it's not going to make too much of a difference. The main factor that's going to determine how long it takes you to enjoy this game or not is how much you care about customizing your character. But I would argue that if you're the type of person who really does care about that, then the act of customizing your character alone is probably something you enjoy, and therefore you're enjoying it right off the bat. If you don't enjoy customizing your character, you can immediately just pick the default and skip right into the game. So it's actually pretty quick to get into. You'll have, even after customizing your character, right in the beginning of the game, there's effectively a playable cutscene, kind of like Half-Life, where you're forced to just do nothing and listen to the ambient dialogue happening. People will approach you in a prison cell. They'll ultimately open a secret hatch on the wall, and that's where you'll begin actually playing the game. I would say when you are finally able to hit the first rat, that's when the game is actually playable to its fullest. And that probably will take you no less than an hour. I doubt it. For the first time you ever playing it, if you're making a new character, you'll be able to go through that faster, but for the first time, you're going to wait for at least an hour. Upon loading it, every consecutive time that you play the game after that point, you're immediately back into the action. So how quickly does the game generate gratification for the player? Well, from new, I would say it's not great. Immediately after that, I would bump it up to a 4. However, that being said, if you are in the middle of a quest or you're in some part of the gameplay where you're not immediately able to do the things that you enjoy, you could easily load the game in the middle of your playthrough and find that you're still slogging through inventory management, dialogue, or other activities that you don't necessarily find immediately enjoyable. I wouldn't say that this kind of RPG is the type of thing that instantly gives you fun. It's not a roguelike. It's not designed on short, discrete play sessions. It's really based on the long-term journey and adventure. The pursuit of player power and the building of your character, it's a slower burn, honestly. So the time to reward in this game, I'm not going to say that it's immediately fun. Sure, you could load one save where you're in the middle of a fight, and technically that would be instantly to the fun, but by and large, it's a slower burn, this game. Learning curve. Well, it's not that hard to know. There are a lot of systems, but it's not necessary for the player to be aware of them in order to enjoy this game. There are some janky things with resistances and different elemental damages, and you can drain enemies' fatigue to make them go unconscious, but if you go digging into the background of this game, you'll see a lot of substance, but that is really only necessary to know for the enthusiast who's very interested in manipulating the game in that way. For the regular player, you get an iron dagger, then a steel dagger, then a silver dagger, then a glass or an orcish, then an ebony. You know what I mean? It's just a linear progression of power. The game will spoon feed you stronger items as you level up. You will level up naturally just by existing. It's not difficult for you to understand what's going on. It's there are different types of enemies. They do different things, but none of this is. It's not an Elden Ring. It's not. It's never really going to present you with a punishing boss fight. The enemy AI is not great. So it's a fairly easy game to learn. One thing I will say though is, with regards to the learning curve from the perspective of understanding how to do anything or how to progress a story, one thing I take for granted is the built-in understanding I have of the game, having played it when it came out originally in 2006. So largely this scoring is going to be separate for two different users across most of the categories. The person who's played Oblivion before, which is going to be a large majority of people playing this, and the person who's never played Oblivion at all, and the remastered edition is their first exposure to this game as a whole. What you might find if you haven't played Oblivion is that the quests and the objectives are not as obvious as they are in other modern RPGs. If you're playing Skyrim, if you're playing The Witcher 3, if you're playing Cyberpunk, the game is going to tell you exactly where to go, and there's going to be a waypoint, so you can't really get lost. Oblivion is not that much worse. It's not as bad as Morrowind with regards to not telling you at all what to do, but it is less obvious. You'll have to wait until noon in order for a certain objective to be able to advance. You need to have a certain item in your inventory to get past a certain part of the quest, and the text in the quest log doesn't tell you as much. So there is a learning curve associated with just getting through the objectives in the quests, that for me, having played it before, I just memorize and I forget that I even knew them to begin with. But there will be a certain amount of Wikipedia-ing that you might need to do in order to fully explore this game. I'm going to give it a 4 because it's really not that difficult, but I reserve the right to come back to it and maybe reduce it once I think more about it. Session flexibility. So this one's kind of, I think, there's nothing really to this one. You can pause at any time. So I think the only thing you cannot do is you cannot save when the game detects that you were either floating in air, so if you jump and then try to save, it won't let you, or if you're in the middle of a combat encounter. So if it detects that there's an enemy aggression radius that you are inside of, I don't believe it allows you to save. So beyond being in combat, the session flexibility is whenever you want, so you can stop or begin playing at any time. So that one effectively is a perfect score, and many single-player games that allow for that flexibility will be given that score. How grindy is the game? This one's a tricky one because it really depends for you as a player how you like to do it. So in the game, there are attributes that you level up. Your one-handed skill, your armor skill, light or heavy, different schools of magic. Everything levels up by you utilizing a specific skill. So if you are just going to level up naturally in the background by doing activities that you want to do, for example, in the beginning, you get a basic set of armor, you go, you kill enemies with the combat style you prefer. If you want to use a spell, you'll use it. If you play that game and just naturally level up, there isn't really a grind at all. However, if you want to get to the maximum level, or you want to get to a higher level in a specific thing to utilize stronger equipment or a stronger spell in that category, the game immediately switches or flips, I think is what I'm trying to say, to a very grindy game where you're casting the same spell over and over again in the middle of a blank room, and you're literally walking into the wall and spamming jump in order to level your athletics, your acrobatics, and your mysticism. So that's incredible grind. So I would say, for the player who wants to get to the maximum level, to do that naturally will take you 1,000 years. And so there is a necessary grind pretty much for every player to get reasonably strong. So I would say Oblivion, of all the games, is quite grindy. Maybe even worse than a 3. No, I don't know. It's pretty bad because it's hard. For the schools, like there are kind of their combat-based skills, and then there are passive skills. The passive skills are things like speech. So speech is kind of, in this game, almost useless. Mercantile would be affecting the prices of things that you buy and sell. Mercantile, you can imagine you'll level passively because you'll probably be killing enemies, looting their items, selling them, and buying new things. That's something you're likely to engage in. Lockpick, sure. You're likely to engage in a lot of lockpicking. Athletics, you're walking all the time. Acrobatics, you're jumping all the time. These are things that it's reasonable to think that you may level those up naturally. But when you get into the schools of magic, illusion or mysticism, these are things that make enemies visible through walls. That's not a spell you're going to be casting the entire game. You're going to cast that 5 times in the whole game. So it's hard to imagine a way in which you use those skills so often that you level them up naturally. You have to really go out of your way to level up a lot of skills, and even the skills that you do use a lot, like one-handed archery, they just take so long to level up because they're based on number of hits. So as you get stronger and you deal more damage with the weapon, there is no correlation between the amount of experience points that you get back. And so you have to just hit things 1,000 times, and you can beat the game 3 times and just haven't landed enough hits with the weapon to get to an appreciable level. So the game has an innate grindiness to it, I would say. Now, it is tricky with this because it's up to you whether you partake in that grind or not, but I'm going to score this based on the grind that does exist, whether you choose to do it or not. So just know that for this score in particular, there is a world where the grindiness isn't as bad as a 2. It could easily go up to a 3 or 4 if you just want to coast through the game and not necessarily get to a high level in any of your stats. Now, another thing to say with this is certain skills, if you go online and you do some research, you can manipulate the rate at which you gain experience points. There are methods that are better for leveling some things up than others, which can massively accelerate the rate at which you do level up, which does negate the grind. But if you have to go online and look for a way to bypass the grind and you can't just play the game naturally to understand that, this is really not going to score highly on a metric designed for the person who doesn't want to have to allocate the mental resources and time to researching a game to enjoy it, right? The whole intent of this review is to say, can I just hop on and play and like it and excel at it? And for the skills in Oblivion, the answer is no. Luckily, the leveling up system they did refine. If this were the basic Oblivion, I would say the score for this is a 1, because you have to, the way that you would have to play to maximize your skill point gain per level up was ridiculous back when the game came out and required a lot of research, but it's no longer bad in that respect. You'll have to look that up to know what I mean there. I won't explain it in full detail. Value proposition is a tricky one. So it's a big game. It's a big RPG like Skyrim. Tons of optional content. You get both of the big DLCs when you get it, which is, I think, Knights of the Nine and Shivering Isles. So you could sink 100 hours, 150 hours into this game if you wanted to pursue all of the side quests, etc. So I think it is expensive, but for that price, it's a decent amount of content. And I think Fallout 4, Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Oblivion, Skyrim, I think all of them are pretty good in terms of value proposition. I think the play time that it affords the player in all of those games, Bethesda's always been a developer that maximizes that kind of content base that you get for the money. So the memory burden, this is for RPGs. There's a specific curve that I'm going to outline here. Effectively, so the memory burden, what this means, and I guess I didn't explain all of the other categories, but the memory burden is how easy is it to remember what you're doing. So you quit the game, and then you start playing it again, and you have to remind yourself, where am I? What's going on? And for some games, it's quite easy, and for other games, it's not. So for Oblivion, and for many RPGs like Skyrim, Witcher 3, there is a curve. And the curve has time on one axis, and then it has likelihood. Is there a Y or an I? Likelihood that you will make a new character, we'll call it. And depending on how long you play, since having played before, the more time you wait, the more likely you're just going to make a new character and give up with your previous run. Now, this is how it would have been as a teenager, for example. I start a new run. I make a new character. It's going to be an archer with these stats. I'm going to level up these things first. Okay, I get to level 10. I've done 20% of the main story, and I've done 10% of all the side quests. Oh, a new game came out that I want to play. Well, let me put Oblivion down, and I'm going to go play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 for a while because it's the new hot game. And then I spend 3 weeks playing that with my friends, or 4 weeks, and I say, oh, Oblivion, I'll get back to it. And then I get back on and I'm like, I look at my quest journal. There's 50 quests. I have no idea what any of them are, or where any of them have to go. I look at my inventory. I can't remember what I was doing or why. None of my stats. I start to disenfranchise myself with the character I built, and I'm like, I don't know if I can get back into this, so I'm just going to make a new character and go again. And this is a vicious cycle for these kind of RPGs. There's so many quests, there's so many threads to follow, there's so many things for you to do that you're building and building and building and building, and it's impossible for you to remember all of that and keep that in your head for any length of time. So if you want a good shot at finishing this game and wrapping up your character, you're going to want to set enough time away that you don't leave it for any long amount of time. As a kid, you would come back and maybe you'd say, okay, I want to play this game. I'm just going to make a new character. As an adult, you're going to come back and you're going to say, I don't want to spend the time figuring out what I'm going to do, and I don't want to make a new character, so I'm just not going to play the game anymore. And so for this one, and many RPGs like this, the memory burden is pretty bad. I think for most RPGs, honestly, the memory burden is pretty bad. And Oblivion, too, a lot of the things aren't that memorable. And the level of detail that's conveyed in the journal entries isn't going to be enough for you to immediately remember, oh yes, I have to go to this NPC and trade him this cabbage, and then wait till noon and then meet him here, and that's one of 50 quests. Good luck remembering, right? So, if you're in the middle of it, you've built your character, you've gotten through the beginning tutorial, you're still ingrained in what's going on, so you haven't forgotten anything or what you're doing, how fun is the game? Well, if you played Oblivion before, you may have a certain amount of nostalgia that's going to elevate your felt sense of enjoyment, because you may remember this game from a good time in your life. It's going to bring up those memories. It may have been a game that you really enjoyed back when it came out, when there was less competition to compare it against. I know that Oblivion was one of my favorite games. It was one of my favorite games. And then I heard about the remastered and I was like so excited, and I played it. And the first few hours were magical because it was everything that the game was great at, and everything looked amazing. The effects, everything was great. But after a while, the magic wore off and the rose-colored glasses came off, and I started to feel the game's age. The combat is not fun, really. The AIs for the enemy is unintuitive. It's hard to want to pursue player power when the game is so easily exploitable. And you'll find that it's extremely easy to just make a single spell that kills everything instantly. And then you ask yourself, well, what am I pursuing anymore? What's the point? I'm already killing everything in one shot. Or you make yourself have 100% chameleon, and none of the enemies can even target you in the first place. Or you have 100% magic resistance, so they can't deal damage with magic, and you have 75% melee reflect, so they kill themselves when they attack you. There's 18 different ways to immediately destroy the difficulty curve. And the difficulty slider itself isn't something that's going to make that any better for you, because it's so ridiculous in terms of how it scales. It goes from being trivial to impossible, where the enemies kill you in a single hit, even if you have all the HP items in the game. So the game is old. The balancing and the programming, it's showing its age. There are more fun games out there today. It's just the way it is. One thing that may help you, if you're a new player and you've never played Oblivion before, the novelty of all of the new things will be enjoyable. For me, I already knew what everything was. So when I saw a new sword, I'm like, oh, ebony? That's stronger than my orcish sword. That didn't make me feel anything. No gratification, because I already knew that. But for you, if it's new to you, new tiers of weapons, new enemies you've never seen before, all of the plot in all the side quests that you aren't familiar with, that novelty will elevate the game. And if you enjoy Skyrim, there are many things about Oblivion that are arguably better than Skyrim. That being said, there are also many things that are worse. So for me, honestly, as an objective review of the quality of the game from somebody who is nostalgic about the game, has played it before, and does think of Oblivion highly, I will give it a 3. I do not think, just by today's standards of games, there are more objectively fun games, even in the RPG category. Just the satisfaction of hitting something with a weapon is just more gratifying in other games. The balance, the combat, how you pursue player power, and how it feels like you're getting stronger in a way that still makes it seem like there's something to pursue because enemies aren't just rolling over. there are other RPGs that do better than this game. So take all of that information and consider it and weigh it against your decision to purchase it. Know that if you do like what you see and you're willing to watch a bit of video footage of what the gameplay loop looks like, if you like that, if you like the breadth of, making spells is a fun thing to do for the first time, there are a lot of well-written quests and there's a lot of charm and humor in the wackiness of what goes on. It's a funny game to play because of the radiant AI of all the quest NPCs. They will do ridiculous things, and those have been kept in to keep it in line with the original feel. If that excites you, then that's fine, and know that for the price, there is a lot of content there. However, being from the perspective of the 9-to-5 worker, this is not the type of game that you just get in and you're in there, and in 2 hours you had an amazing time. This is the type of game, it's a slower burn. Set up your character, decide upon your long, sweeping goals. Are you trying to maximize your stats? Do you want to do the Fighters Guild and the Thieves Guild and the Mages Guild? Do you want to be the Grand Champion of the arena? Do you want to go to all the major cities? Do you want to close all the Oblivion gates? There's a lot of things to do. And you have to ask yourself, does that interest you or does that seem like a chore? And it's not a cheap game. So if it seems like a chore, you could probably buy 3 roguelikes that each are more satisfying than this in terms of just pure dopamine per second. Couple that with the fact that life is going to hit and you're going to have to go away from your computer for multiple weeks. You're going to come back, you're going to look in your spell inventory, and you're going to see Test 1, Test 7, cast Lockpick in a 100-foot radius, and then cause enemies to go on fire and disintegrate your own armor for 5 seconds. And you're going to be like, what the hell? What is any of this? That is a reality that you will face, and that's going to make you want to just not play the game. So let's see. I have my own personal flex points to assign to this game. I'll put 0.1 for nostalgia, and that's going to make the score overall a 3.1, and I think it's being carried by the value proposition and the session flexibility of a purely single player game that you can pause anytime. Means you can stop at any time too. I'm happy enough with that score, and I'm willing to add it now to the table of games. So this is Oblivion. I'll the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And let's see here. 3, 4, 5, 2, 4, 2, 3. 3, 4, 5, 2, 4, 2, 3. Is that right? 3, 4, 5, 2, 4, 2, 3, and a 0.1. And that makes it equal to Elden Ring Night Rain. Do I agree with that? I don't know. Maybe I have to look at that score again. But anyway, that's what it is for now. So if you think that that makes any sense, then check out my other videos.